Morning, everyone. It's such an honor and pleasure to kick off Hatch Conference with you. I don't think I've been in Berlin since 7 years ago, so it's nice to be back. It feels like a lot has changed and not at the same time. And in many ways, that's very similar to what's going on in our design industry. What I'd like to do today is just share a little bit about my shared experience. This is not a type of talk that's really talking about the state of design and these factual trends, but I can share something I've seen and a trend that I find very interesting and compelling. And it might be kind of interesting because I'm talking about things that might not be about design at a design conference, so we'll see how this goes. But if you bear with me, I'd like to talk about this concept of design and. So I have good news. For the past few years, things have been looking good for design. I know sometimes you might not believe me when I say this because it feels like design is still fighting for impact, influence, and a seat at the table. But let's take a moment and really reflect where we've come. In the past 5 years or so, it was very rare to even see a head of design or a chief design officer. And now we're seeing it a lot in Fortune 500 companies and also early stage startups. I think the value of design is not something that's debated anymore. However, there's still a lot of work to do. Despite these investments, it's a good intention, but what's important is really thinking about how we execute and how we get things done. One of the challenges I see a lot is I hear from a lot of people, maybe they're a brand designer and they're like in a completely different department than product design. It's like, we have all these designers, but we're siloed in these different departments. We're not really collaborating. There's more of us. We're doing the same things, so that's good, but there's still something that feels like it hasn't fundamentally changed. And this is where I'm coming to share with you that the work has to be throughout the entire organization. You can't just hire a chief design officer and call it good and just slap design on it. It has to be very thoughtful in how you approach it. So this is my spicy take, is that chief design officer is not the only path, and it shouldn't be. I want to be abundantly clear, I'm not demeaning the role of a chief design officer. It's equally as important. But what I'm saying is that cannot be one person's work to really affect change. And if you can resonate with me, I've always had this struggle with my career where I didn't know if I wanted to be a designer, product manager, engineer, marketer, and just felt really contained in doing this one area. But I really love design at the core and really wanted to learn, like, how can I apply that in other places? And it was one of these things I realized throughout my 20-year career is that throughout the organizations, the one person who knows everything that's going on is the designer. This is from knowing like what the legal team's working on. This is kind of knowing the hiring and interviewing process. And it's in our nature to be horizontally oriented, to know how the business runs, because it's what we do every day. So I want to challenge this notion of just design and what design and can mean. Perhaps it's exploring new frontiers in the stage of AI, like we did mobile in the early 2010s. Perhaps it's burning it all down and starting something new, being a founder. Build the table versus get a seat at it. Many of us are becoming capital allocators, and now you've seen a generation of designers now starting to give back and invest in companies. Marketing and storytelling is so entwined with the customer experience. We're seeing more design and marketing. And this last one is probably something everyone has felt at some point, is design and product. Raise your hand if you've reported to a head of product or a head of engineering. Why is this not flipped? Why not a head of design running product? We work so closely every day. And it's something that I think we should really challenge. Before I share a little bit about my experiences, I want to tell you a story of irrelevant skills. The quotes are very important here. I really believe careers are not linear paths. It's not going rung by rung in the career ladder or this straight line of continued progression. In fact, it's quite the opposite. One of my favorite stories is Homer's Odyssey, and I think it's really that. It's taking lateral steps in your career. Sometimes it's taking a step backwards during trying times, and we've all endured a lot of challenging things. Throughout my career odyssey, I kind of thought I knew what I wanted. I was like, I wanted to be a software designer, I want to build products, and I want to ship. Anything else is just like stuff I should not be doing, and I didn't like doing that. So I want to share a reflection with you. In a few places I'm sharing a couple of the irrelevant skills that I personally experienced. In my early career, I worked at ExactTarget, which is an email marketing company. It's now the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I was an early employee there and was spending most of my time building HTML emails, running marketing campaigns, doing analytics, working with project managers. I did not do anything around the product. I didn't do any product design. A few years later, I worked at HTC for a year, and this one terrified me because it was in my title. It was Global Digital Marketing. And I thought it was the kiss of death for my career. If I go this path, no one's going to hire me as a product designer or software designer. At HTC, I had the pleasure of joining and working with my mentor and doing a lot of creative strategy, photography, and yes, a lot of email marketing. So couldn't shake that off. At One Medical, I was the first head of design there and hired our product designers and researchers. Had the opportunity to collaborate a lot with our marketing team. Did quite a few rebrands there. In fact, there were 3 during my 4-year tenure there. Got to work with the member experience team, thinking about how they talk about customer journeys, not related to product design. And yes, had to do a lot of email marketing. So can never shake it off. It's the one thing I never tell people that I can do. It's my hidden secret, but I guess the world knows now. Suddenly, I realized these irrelevant skills became the things I needed to be able to take on things in the future. The quote about Steve Jobs talking about only being able to connect the dots looking back may sound cliche, but there's so much truth to it. All the things I thought that was time wasted and things that were not getting me to where I want to go were actually the things that propelled me to the next challenges. When I worked at Webflow as the first head of design there, I had the opportunity to run brand for the first few years. And again, it was because I had this experience of lifecycle marketing, brand, customer success, all these stories that really became something where I was suited to take this on. And it was an important part of the role as they were kind of looking for their first leader. And if I didn't have that experience, you could argue I might not have gotten the role. At Replit, where I was for the past year and some months, I joined as the head of design. There was no focus on marketing, and it was something that wasn't planned. I was just focusing on design and research. But suddenly, there was an opportunity for someone to take on marketing in the interim. We were looking for a VP of marketing and really trying to figure out this challenge of really getting the marketing and brand to be at the level of where the product is. It was one of the first times I've been in a place where the product was ahead of the marketing, so we had some work to do. So instead of hiring someone full-time right away, the founders asked me to take it on in the interim. And again, if it wasn't for this previous experience and the things that felt like such irrelevant, I don't think I would have felt ready to take it on. But in that case, I decided to say yes. Yes, and I will take on marketing, design marketing. A few months later, they offered me to take on the role permanently as the VP of marketing and design. I could have said no, could have focused on design. But I think what I realized was the biggest design challenges were actually living on marketing right now. And that's where I needed to put my energy. So I said I would do it. Now, as mentioned, I recently joined Atlassian and now focusing on design and AI, and could do, maybe in the future, come back and share that experience. But in this case, I'll do a look back at that 10-year at Replit running design and marketing and how I approached it. Marketing is one of those unique functions where it looks different everywhere else, right? And it's one of the things that's hard to manage because each individual person is specialized in a different thing. A content marketer is way different than a product marketer or a lifecycle marketer. For us in product design or research, it's a little bit more of a similar type of attributes. So it was very vertical and very spread. So I really focused on developer relations. Replit's a software creation platform. So really winning developers over was a really hard task. There's the only persona that is more opinionated than designers are developers. So we really had to get our messaging right and win them over because they smell BS. This is how we were organized. I will tell you, when you look at this org chart, seems pretty classic, right? There's really no innovation to it. Like, we're all under the same roof now. But for me, my philosophy is org charts are just really a means to organize structure and get things done operationally. We didn't really care about the silos, so we organized traditionally. But the thing that was important is that all these orgs were under one leader, and there was a lot more unified cohesion around where you can prioritize things and get things done. In many ways, it was less bartering and negotiation and more action. So when I reflected on how to run marketing, there was really only one answer for me, and that's run it like a designer. So really, the marketers really had to learn design tools and really understand our processes. And really for us, it was just starting with the customer experience. We tout so much about end-to-end customer experiences, and yet we put all the people working on customer experience on completely different teams. So really, we kind of started there at the foundation. And we wanted to take an integrated marketing approach. Like, what is a story that's really going to compel people about what they can be, what they can create using Replit versus thinking about all this performance marketing and analytics. And I'm not saying data is a bad thing, but it's a thing you need to kind of start with the intuition and have the data be something you look at as a signal and the guidance. Often we over-index too much and ask the data to tell us what to do. We prioritized our work by journey. There's a lot of teams. Maybe you as designers have experienced this, where you're on the team that's on the dashboard, or you're on the core editor, or you're on these other areas that really make it clear to people that you shipped your entire org chart and you know who's responsible for what. We wanted to fold that down and just really look at that end-to-end experience and where there were the biggest gaps or the biggest opportunities we needed to optimize for. We put the entire team there. It was easy to just seamlessly move everyone there where you're under the same org. I get asked a lot how you run the rituals. That's so important too, right, to get in that flow state. And what we ended up doing was really optimizing for the overlaps, the areas where it did make sense. So many times in my career as a product designer, the marketing team might come with something after the fact, or they're already working on a story on something the product can't do. So now there's this opportunity to really infuse that together and intentionally build these rituals. So our project reviews, marketing and design, we're all in it together to kind of talk about, when we think about this product initiative, how do we really have clear cohesion in the beginning versus after the fact and being a scramble on how to do it. And in the year or so that we worked together, we achieved a lot of things I'm very proud of with the team. We did a rebrand. I was not afraid of doing a rebrand because I've been through it so many times. We did a developer day that was really our signature event to really announce what we've been up to and really going after this new ideal customer profile. We launched a new team products and started telling customer stories instead of talking about the features that the product can do. So this is a photo of Developer Day where we worked with some partners but did the majority of in-house, from storyboarding the script to running the rehearsals and doing the designs, not only of the keynote, but also the product itself. And we were able to ship a lot of features and really kind of tell that story together. So again, all these things were kind of done hand in hand. We launched a new collaboration feature. And we changed the way we talked about customer stories, talking about the faces and what people were trying to achieve versus how much compute you can get or something like that. So we really built this campaign around what it's like to build on Replit, to be built on Replit. A quick recap of some of the learnings. Again, organize traditionally, execute unconventionally. I found this opportunity unique to really do something different in the way we execute, so didn't want to just go about it like the status quo. When in doubt, run the function like a designer, right? Because it's in our nature as designers to understand the need, identify the gaps and problems, and find an elegant solution. Just what we do every day, applied to organizations. Prioritize around the journeys and find overlaps that you can optimize your team. And I want to share a few lessons just from this that may be more global, not necessarily around design and marketing or some of the other functions. I think the first is to understand your archetype, whether you're leading as an IC or a manager, of what is it you want to do. I'm not here to tell you you need to do more things, because we as designers are always asked to do more things, but consider what might happen if you do. I could have easily said, no, I just want to focus on design, and there's enough depth and work to make an impact there. So when you reflect on what you want to do in terms of your career and leadership moving forward, think about that archetype. We need multiple archetypes throughout organizations and the industry. Saying I say a lot to my teams is go out of scope. Scott Belsky once said that the best designers go about 10% rogue on every single project. And you really should, right? Because the most impactful things that we need to work on are the things we're not told to do. So it's important to seek that out. And if you continuously push back and say no, at some point people will stop coming to you asking for help. And you always want to keep that door open. So I'm always, if you've done any design thinking or improv, you know the saying of yes and. This is yes and applied to the company level. In the third lesson, we often talk a lot about impact. But I will tell you this, sometimes it doesn't live on our team. It might be a company you're working at where the recruiting and hiring process is broken, and they need to think about that experience. It may be the story on marketing. It may be other different functions. Again, in our horizontal nature, we are able to see a lot and identify problems, and we may need to go outside of our department to have design impact. So how might you get this type of experience? Because it's something that just doesn't come overnight. It's through an odyssey of different experience where I personally ended up there. But for those of you who are keen about this, I'll share a couple of tips. The number one thing is obvious, but it's so important, is you have to run design well first. There is no trust in someone giving you more scope if you feel like you're always being stretched thin, always saying no, and there's too much to do. But if you have it under controlled and handled, people are always going to give you more scope. I always give more scope to people on my teams where they have things very handled. And if this is something you really care about and want to explore, you might need to give up some scope right now just to be able to focus on those successful outcomes, right? It's the outcomes, not the outputs, that you're going to be measured on. So that's my first tip. Really reflect, get to a stage where design is running well, and then we'll talk about the and. Leadership's a universal skill. One of the challenging things that I experienced is this was the first time I've led functions that were outside of my discipline. So now I'm instructing and giving direction on people who've specialized in something way more than I have. You know, mine is an amalgam of these irrelevant skills. But what's important is how do you guide people towards outcomes, unblock for them, and give them opportunities to be successful. I would say for most people, that's really what they want in a manager, to be able to maximize their potential and their outcomes. And as mentioned, it's important to go out of scope. And ways you can do that real quickly is so much as just reaching out, saying hi to other departments, seeing how you can participate. One of the ways I was able to be a little bit more cross-functional was I started ending up on interview panels for a head of product or head of engineering, and really got to spend time with those teams. So that's your way in to be able to, to evaluate. And the last one is desk research. Study great leaders out there. They may be people in your favorite publications that are writing about success stories. It may be someone you work with in the department, in another department at your company that you can learn from. Observe what good looks like and really develop a sense of that. We talk about taste all the time as designers. The ability to evaluate and give your point of view on other functions in the business is simply taste and curation. I always share the story that I'm the last person that should be running finance. I don't have a finance background. However, I've worked with a lot of great finance leaders, and I've seen how they made decisions. I've seen how they scaled companies, lead their teams, raise money. Those are lived experiences too. So a lot of the things that you experience through your colleagues is through osmosis. So I ask you to have an open mind, because I know sometimes in the thick of it, the cross-functional conflict can be a challenging thing. But take a moment and observe some of the greatness that they're doing too, or the things that can be improved. Because in the future, your lens is going to be really important for that. Just to wrap us up, embrace irrelevant skills. I think sometimes we're asked to do the things that may not be exciting, but I think one thing you can do is reflect to say, you know, how might I learn from this? Even if it's the most boring project you've ever worked on, there might be something that comes out of it in the future. And of course, it's always easier looking back, but if you can anticipate where I might get value from this, it's going to be super helpful. We need more than chief design officers. So whatever it is that's your passion, figure out what that is that you can kind of contribute to the greater good of design. Design's horizontal nature really makes us great to be multifunctional leaders. Look outside of departments to see where the impact might be in the design work. Often it's not within our team. And design and is when you say yes and to the company. Design and is good design. There's so many different things, right? We have struggled for so many years, if not decades, to kind of put design in a box. But design is a capability that can be applied to anywhere across the businesses, whether it's really deep craft in interface or how to run a business. So I'll close with this provocation. What if design had more than one seat at the table? What if next to that chief design officer, there was a head of product who started as a designer, or a head of marketing, or a CCO, or a COO? That, to me, is really the special opportunity. And with that, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the conference.